We have very little information so far on the RSI gunboat, or as it's purported to be called, the RSI Perseus. I've spent a little bit of time in 3DS pulling down the game files to compare it to other ships within the game to get an idea of what we can find out. So here we are in 3ds Max. As you can see, we have Perseus here, and we have an Aegis Hammerhead. Now, the way that CIG work with the game files is everything is measured in meters, everything is scaled to meters, which means that I'm able to import them into 3ds Max to scale. However, when importing hollow viewer ships, as the RSI Perseus is, it requires me to scale the ship manually, as they're never to the correct scale. And this is where we come across the first issue, and where there's a lot of disagreement with people about the size of the ship. You see, there are two reference points that we can use on the Perseus model currently. The first is with these remote turrets here. Now, this barrel is from the Mantis GT220, which I'm sure anyone who's ever used those weapons will agree is what these weapons are. By scaling the ship to match the barrel size of the Mantis GT220, we end up with a ship size roughly equivalent to the Aegis Hammerhead, which, for those who are unaware, is 115 meters long. This also then allows us to take a look at these rather large guns on the bow of the ship. There are also a pair of these guns on the bottom as well. Now, what I've done here is I've imported the barrels for the bearing laser repeaters. This one is a size 9, which as you can see is a little bit bigger than these. This one's a size 8, and lines up pretty well. This one's a size 7, and I think we can all agree they're probably not size 7 guns. So this gives us an idea of just how large these front and bottom main guns are. Now, as I said, there are actually two reference points that we can use to scale the ship. Over here, I have a rather larger one. You see, the other reference point we can use is these here, the manoeuvring thrusters. Now, it just so happens that the manoeuvring thrusters on the RSI Perseus are the exact same manoeuvring thrusters that can be found on the Aegis Hammerhead. When we scale the RSI Perseus such that the manoeuvring thrusters match those of the Aegis Hammerhead, we find that the ship is quite a bit bigger. In fact, the ship goes from 115 meters to 145. What's interesting to note is that these guns no longer match the right size, they're no longer size 3s. However, if I bring in the barrel from the Apocalypse Arms Revenant Ballistic Gatling, one of my favourite weapons, you'll see that all of a sudden the sizes line up pretty well when the ship is scaled to this size. So, how does that impact the main guns then? Well, size 7 is most definitely out at this point, as, incidentally, is the size 8. Meaning that these guns, if this ship is now scaled correctly, are in fact twin size 9s. Meaning that the RSI Perseus is thus equipped with 4 size 9 guns. For comparison, that's the equivalent of 2 Idris railguns worth of firepower. Now, this is of course assuming that this scale is correct. It may simply have some rather large manoeuvring thrusters, and in actuality they are size 8s, in which case the total firepower equates to that of a single Idris, which is still not something to sniff at. For those who are curious, by the way, I have also imported an 890 jump just to give you an idea of scale of the Hammerhead, the Perseus, and what is currently the longest ship in the game. So what else are we able to discern from the ship model that we currently have for the Perseus? Well, there's a few things. Looking at the bottom, we can see that we have what appears to be a cargo lift of some sort. Additionally, we have landing gear, what appears to be 2 more landing gear, and some pretty big manoeuvring thrusters on the underside. In fact, the manoeuvring thrusters on the base are actually twice the size of the ones on the top. This means one of two things. Either this ship is designed to go into atmosphere and these mavs are going to pull double duty as VTOL, or Well, that's the only thing I can think of, to be completely honest. Looking further along the bottom, we see nothing else really of interest. So let's move around to the side. Now, at this moment in time, there is no information what this is. There are one of these on each side, and it's pretty obvious to see that there is a hinge mechanism of some sort. How this is going to open, whether it folds down or folds up, is completely unknown. I spent some time speculating with members of the Star Citizen Leaks Discord a couple of days ago on what this could potentially be, and there's a few theories running around. I am leaning towards one of two things. Either it's simply a ramp of some sort that's used to load stuff in and out whilst in space, or it's used as some form of ordnance bay, which seems to be a more popular theory. For example, they could be ramps to drop large munitions such as unguided bombs, or they could even be missile bays. Unfortunately, until we have the ship in our hands, there's no way of knowing. There's one more part of the Perseus' model which piques interest, and that's the 4 slits on the underside of the ship towards the front. There are 2 prevailing theories to what these are. The first, and what I'm leaning towards being the most likely, especially if the ship is on the smaller side, is that these are in fact just retro thruster banks. However, if we scale the ship up to the larger size, and this Argos 9 torpedo just so happens to fit pretty much perfectly within these slits. Which is where the other theory comes from, and that's that the RSI Perseus isn't just going to be equipped with some of the biggest guns in the game, but also may in fact actually come equipped with a few torpedoes as well. In fact, if I was to clone these torpedoes here, as you can see, there just so happens to be enough room in the front of the hull to fit around 8 size 9 torpedoes, and some form of self-propelled ordnance should be expected of a ship of this size. Unfortunately, due to the size of its guns, it's not going to be able to ward off any even medium fighters such as vanguards, meaning that it's going to need something to defend itself from attackers. The remote turrets will do okay, but their range of motion, especially along the flanks, is somewhat restricted, and so a complement of self-propelled ordnance is most likely going to come along with the Perseus. If it doesn't, it's going to need an escort. There's one other thing that I want to look at as well, and this is more my own personal theory than it is something generally agreed on, and that's that this front section of the ship here is going to be just one big thick plate of armour. We've seen from CIG's own artwork that the Perseus is supposedly capable of ramming straight through a hammerhead. In order to do that, it's got to have a sharp pointy nose, check, and it's got to have a hell of a lot of armour. And from the model, I'd say that looks pretty armoured. But what are your thoughts? We're genuinely curious what you think. What do you think the RSI Perseus is going to be? Is it going to be this larger ship here, or is it going to be more hammerhead sized? How big do you think the guns are looking at these comparisons? Leave your thoughts down below, and with that, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch y'all next time.